Chandler, I'm gonna need you to give us that Creed in Jackson intro real quick.
I can't just do that on command. Actually, I can.
Well, you did it twice last week, so.
You want it? You want it now?
Yeah.
Did I stutter?
Got clear little pipes out.
Friends, running out the clock. It's time for us to go to a place that is outside of our minds. It's time for us to go higher.
That was the most beautiful thing.
Chandler even gave us a burp.
In the entire. Well, he has to. I mean, he knows the rules.
It was the traditional intro burp.
Wow, that was incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, this is regrettably running out the clock. I am Joseph Craven. We are joined, as always, by our dear friends, Ro Hunter. Hey, Ro. Oh, that's right. Ro didn't show up.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Oh, anyway.
Come to talk with you again.
Keith Big Red Harkins. Hello, Keith.
Hello.
That was... I don't know if that was supposed to be cute.
Because of vision softly speaking.
All right. And of course, the one singing there is the one and the only. You know him. You're forced to love him.
Art Garfunkel.
That's Bartleby Garbage Chute. So, we're
Bartleby Scott Stapp Garbage Chute.
Oh, man. All right. Whatever. Hey, the regular season apparently is over, which is really hard to believe. I don't feel like we've been doing this for like 14 weeks now.
Yeah, but the regular season went down swinging.
And boy, did it. Everybody went down swinging. Good God.
Well done, sir.
That was a great setup. Yeah, everyone was fighting. You had Ole Miss, Mississippi State. You had Jimbo's nephew versus a man with Parkinson's.
Versus another very large man that didn't have Parkinson's.
You had Leonard Fournette versus Shaq Lawson, which is even breaking outside of the college ranks. You had that going on, which was hilarious. So just a lot of fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Rivalry week, as I kept calling it last week, was just a brutal week. And I think it's solid that we start things off the way that we always start things off. And that's with a brutal segment that we call Talk About the Knowles. Keith, I'm going to allow you to gloat about Florida's victory over Florida State in one sentence. Go.
Suck it, Tallahassee.
The
whole city.
Going with the whole city route.
Nerds.
Nice tag in there. Chandler, your assessment in one sentence of Florida State not being bowl eligible for the first time in like 100 years.
I mean, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, I'm just going to go with that being awesome. Good job.
It's wonderful.
You guys did great.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Which reminds me, remember Jimbo's sad Christmas tree outside of his house in Tallahassee last year? That was a thing that went around on the internet.
I don't remember that. I only really remember the Aggie band welcoming him to the airport.
Yeah.
This year.
That was also great. Just like North Korea.
I don't like when did he fly to North Korea? Is he North Korea's coach too?
Yes, he is.
Well, that I did not anticipate. So, all right. Good for him.
We're off to a great start.
What else do we do on this podcast? I forget. Oh yeah. We normally try to start things off on a positive note by giving credit to somebody that we think doesn't get enough credit for what they've been doing this past week. most of the time in the world of college football. Sometimes we branch out, but I mean, we normally started off with Chandler. Why change that now? Chandler, who you got? You got anyone in particular that you want to give a shout out to? That someone deserves some credit this week? Something good they've done?
Very early on in this college football podcast, I will confess that I watched very little college football and don't know much of anything about what happened. So I'm going to give a shout out to Ole Miss sophomore guard Devontae Shuler, who was the only bright spot in a game against Cincinnati that the Rebels lost. But Shuler had himself a game. I think he had 20 points, I think, in the first half, finished with 26 or 28, something like that. And looked really good and gave, I think, Ole Miss fans a lot to look forward to with what Kermit Davis might be able to do, maybe with the team this year, but definitely in the years to come. So big shout out to Devontae Shuler there.
Is that the ice hockey team?
Yes, ice hockey. Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure I followed you. Just making sure. Keith, how about you? Anyone that you want to give some credit to that doesn't get enough?
I'm gonna give a shout out and a lot of credit to the sport of basketball. But no, for real, I'm gonna give a shout out to the entire Vanderbilt receiving corps, helping Kyle Shermer go 31 of 35 for 367 yards and 3 touchdowns. And towards the end of the first half, they had a couple of plays where, one of their wide receivers makes like a circus catch. It's unbelievable. And it's like, oh, that's Sports Center top 10 for sure. And then they turn right around and score a touchdown right before halftime and another circus catch where maybe he outshined his colleagues' other circus catch. So circus catches for everybody. Everybody look under your seat. Circus catch! You get a circus catch. You get a circus catch.
What an evening.
Good for them. And also, thank you, Vanderbilt, so much for ending Tennessee's bowl hopes.
Yeah, and for, being able to pull off 2 clutch victories that maybe they shouldn't have been pulling off in order to become bowl eligible themselves. Kyle Shermer, of course, a co-offensive player of the week in the SEC this week for what he was able to do, which is pretty cool on him. Good for him. Because he earned the nod, basically because he had a conference opponent, I'm going to give someone who deserves credit to another SEC quarterback. Actually, I'm going to give it to a quarterback and wide receiver duo that did not get enough credit, A, because their team lost, but B, because they were not playing a conference opponent. And that's Jake Bentley and Deebo Samuel at South Carolina. For anyone who was unaware, in that loss, Jake Bentley went 32 of 50, which has to be the most passes South Carolina's attempted in one game in
It's more passes they've attempted in their history.
Yeah, I was going to say in the history of the program.
Put together, yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
He completed 32 out of 50 for 510 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception on the day. Deebo Samuel doing his part to help out. 10 receptions, 210 yards, and 3 touchdowns. My goodness.
Making Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney want to leave his job at Clemson.
Yeah, put him on the hot seat. You know how Clemson really underperforming here this year.
which is really funny as he's complaining that people are like, oh, this isn't good enough. And the conversation mostly seems to be about him taking the job at Alabama after Saban leaves.
Right.
Paul, he gave up 6 points. That's unacceptable for this Tide defense, Paul. We got to fire him.
Probably should.
The Bears rolling over in his grave, Paul.
Probably should. But anyway, yeah, so I saw an angry South Carolina fan on Twitter who was just like, hey, SEC, how can Bentley not be Offensive Player of the Week? And I didn't respond to him because I don't want to engage with people that I actually know, much less strangers. And I was like, buddy, they weren't playing a conference opponent and they lost. So most of the time, the SEC is not going to give an award to somebody that wasn't playing an SEC game, you know?
Yeah.
It just means more in this
It just means
conference.
more, yeah. I mean, what the hell are you thinking?
It just means more.
It just means more.
SEC.
Isn't that chick an Auburn grad? I think she is.
I don't know who she is.
They said her name and that she was an Auburn grad in one of the commercials, if I remember correctly.
Anna Kendrick.
It was not Anna Kendrick. She is not an Auburn grad. I know this because I know almost everything about her life. Let's run through the scores real quick from the past week just to refresh everyone's memories. Mississippi State defeated Ole Miss 35-3 in the Egg Bowl. Missouri defeated Arkansas, blanked them 38-0 in the not really in the South or the East Bowl.
The best of the bowls.
You both talked at the same time. I didn't understand any of it. I'm going to keep going. Georgia defeated Georgia Tech 45-21. Florida panhandled Florida State. Is that a thing? Can I say that? 41-14. Yeah, whatever. I'm in it. Alabama defeated Auburn 52-21. Weird box score in that game. So I was looking at it, recapping it earlier today, and I was like, my goodness, what a weird box score. Because Auburn actually kept cutting it close, and then in the third quarter, Alabama went, all right, we're done. Vanderbilt defeated Tennessee 38-13 to become bowl eligible and prevent Tennessee from doing such. Their third straight win over Tennessee. That's awesome. Can the whole giving credit
hurt?
I know. Can the whole giving credit to someone that hasn't gotten enough credit just go to the entirety of Vanderbilt for what they're able to pull off this weekend? My goodness. Clemson. Thank you, sir. Crunch the numbers for us, Chandler, and let us know if that works out. Clemson and South Carolina played, but Clemson defeated them 56-35 in another weirdly close game. Kentucky absolutely destroyed an awful Louisville program, 56-10. 56 points. Is that? Well, I'll look at it. Is that the most that Kentucky scored?
56 points is truly outrageous.
I'm looking right now, and yeah, that is definitely the most points that they have scored all season.
Louisville's absentee father, Papa John, is very disappointed in them.
Yeah, no kidding.
Pretty sure that not too long ago, Kentucky didn't score 56 points in the entire season.
Yeah, it was last year, I'm pretty sure. And then Texas A&M was able to hold off the upset bid from number 7 LSU, and in a modest 7 overtimes defeated them 74-72. And we got a lot to talk about in that game because that was an example of a team that might have gotten a lot of assistance from the officials. Yikes. So yeah, that's it right there. Also, we need to point out that we made a grave error last week in our predictions segment where we did not even predict the Vanderbilt Tennessee game. Whoops.
That's how much it meant to all of us.
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
We just forgot.
Disrespecting the doors in that one. Whoops. That's on us.
Excuse you. It's the bowl eligible doors. Thank you.
Did they change their name?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, my bad. All right, so they're now officially known as the Vanderbilt bowl eligible Commodores. So good on them.
Anchor down into a bowl.
Last week, let's see. Looking at our predictions, we all did quite well. Chandler and I only missed one. Well, we all missed the LSU Texas A&M game. Chandler and I correctly predicted that Ohio State would beat Michigan. So Chandler and I got 8 correct predictions. Keith and Roe got 7 correct predictions by not predicting Ohio State to beat Michigan. So Keith's still in the lead with 108. I'm apparently in second place with 105. And Roe and Chandler tied with 103. All right, look at you guys. We're all trying to catch up to Keith. But you're just slipping. I'm sorry. For some reason, I could not hear you. Your audio cut out for a second. And it sounded like you came in, like you leaned into the microphone and went, scooping. And I was like, what does that even mean? What does that even mean?
It been skipping.
Skipping. All right, we're going to play a little game here now. And it's not the game that I had written down originally. It is a more recent idea from our recent conversations tonight of playing a little game called Coaching Carousel Wildcard. All right. And what we're going to do here is we're going to try as a team to come up with the most outrageous but maybe plausible coaching carousel move that might happen this offseason, noting some of the things that have happened in the country, such as Texas Tech firing Cliff Kingsbury, the apparent rumors of maybe Mike Leach would be open to return to Texas Tech, things like that, some of the coaching fires that have already happened, some of the rumors that are starting to swirl. We're gonna go ahead and start to kind of brainstorm a little bit here. Chandler, do you have any ideas to start us off on what could be a ridiculous coaching carousel move that maybe is plausible, maybe we just really would find entertaining to happen?
I thought of a pretty wild one that's kind of a combination of several of the ones that I had suggested.
I love it.
So this one begins with a rumor.
Okay.
We don't know yet what's happening at Auburn.
Sure.
Although there was a blue check mark tweet that went out today saying that there are discussions and that initial conversations with the top target for Auburn, should Gus Malzahn be let go, have been had. So my theory is that individual that has been spoken to is none other than retired Oklahoma coach Bob Stoops. Now, Bob Stoops will take the Auburn job after Gus Malzahn is fired, and Bob Stoops will come in, and Bob Stoops will hire one Hugh Freeze as his offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So here's what you have, and there's one more layer to this too. But here's what you have: you have Bob Stoops, who's won a national championship and who has beaten Nick Saban. You have Hugh Freeze, who has also beaten Nick Saban.
Yeah.
And then by the time we get to the Iron Bowl next season, starting quarterback Jalen Hurts for the Auburn Tigers will be leading the Tigers onto the field at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Jordan with an O, of course.
Yeah, I don't understand what you just said. It doesn't sound like English.
As the Auburn Tigers complete the weirdest coaching carousel / transfer quarterback market thing that possibly could happen.
Man, I like it. That is a strong start. I actually was chatting with a friend of mine the other day. He's an Auburn fan, and he mentioned something. Hugh Freeze kind of came up in conversation, and he jokingly, half jokingly at least, went, it doesn't matter. Freeze will be coaching at Auburn next year anyway. And so there's already amongst Auburn people, they're latching onto that rumor that Hugh Freeze will come in as the offensive coordinator, no matter who the coach is.
Which it's funny. It's funny to see the version of Hugh Freeze that exists in the minds of sports media and a lot of fans, and then the version of Hugh Freeze that I think actually exists, because I think the version of Hugh Freeze that actually exists on an ego level would not allow himself to work for Gus Malzahn. That would be just the ultimate, most humiliating thing that can happen to him.
Well, I mean, I don't know. A lot of this depends on what he decides to do after his team wins the inaugural AAF season in the spring, because I don't think there's any doubt that any team coached by Hugh Freeze is going to win the Alliance of American Football.
Not at all.
In its debut season. Not a question. Not a question at all. All right, Keith, we've got an Auburn situation here that we're working with. What's a hypothetical that you want to float out there for us to consider?
I'm going to offer a retort to Chandler's Auburn situation.
Interesting. Bold move.
I think that Gus Malzahn gets bought out.
Which you stated in a group text earlier that you understand the term bought out to mean executed.
They're going to kill him.
Okay. So when we say bought out, just as a general rule here to the listener, when we say bought out, like a coach has a buyout on this podcast, we actually mean that coach has a clause in his contract that allows him to be executed by the school.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, go ahead.
Ole Miss, seeing a dead Gus Malzahn, says this guy is better than Matt Luke.
Fact check.
And-
True.
Chandler quickly with the ROTC analytics department ran some numbers.
Yeah, ran the numbers very quickly on that one. It was not a difficult number crunch there.
So seeing the corpse of Gus Malzahn doing nothing in southeastern Alabama, fires Matt Luke, hires Gus Malzahn. Gus Malzahn's corpse quickly reanimates and hires Cliff Kingsbury to be OC. Meanwhile, at Auburn, the madman himself, Mike Leach, descends to the great state of Alabama from his perch atop Washington State.
His
And takes
perch.
control of the Auburn
Atop
Tigers
You had a lot of pirate references you missed on that one.
and hires Hugh Freeze as his OC. So basically, no matter what, Hugh Freeze is going to be the OC at Auburn.
Yeah, apparently so. I like it. Now, I do want to point out that there's definitely, I'm pretty sure Washington State is definitely not on a mountain itself. I think it's pretty much in a prairie, but not that matters.
But the chances are pretty high that the elevation in Washington is higher than it is in Auburn.
No, that's fairly true, I guess. I like it. I like it a whole lot. I'm going to offer another rebuttal to your rebuttal, though.
Ooh.
All right, here it is. I'm gonna go for it. If I don't, burp myself to death right in the middle of that. Anyway, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this. First and foremost, Texas Tech and Mike Leach are able to work out a deal. And Mike Leach returns to Texas Tech, where he never really wanted to leave. He wanted to be a career guy there. He settles with the state legislature of Texas, who he's in a real fight with right now. And then Mike Leach, just to prove that he doesn't take anything from anyone, hires Cliff Kingsbury to be his OC. Kingsbury is like, well, that sounds pretty ridiculous, but Mike Leach is like, no, man, we can make this work. Trust me on it.
For $50 million.
Yeah. Mike Leach willingly pays Kingsbury to be, willingly pays him more than Mike Leach himself is making because he doesn't care. He's crazy. He's a madman. He's going to swing his sword.
Mike Leach doesn't get paid in dollars. It's doubloons.
Yeah.
Now you make the pirate joke.
Just when you least expect it. Just like a pirate.
Just like a pirate coming in right at when you least. I love it. I love it. So that's what happens at Texas Tech, which of course means then that Mike Leach does not take over when naturally Gus Malzahn is right. Well, we're all really, really hinging all of this on Gus Malzahn being fired.
He's going to be fired.
Yep. Let's just go ahead and say it. So, all right. So let's say that happens. Malzahn's fired. So they got to get somebody in there at Auburn, right? So that will happen. But also,
Matt Luke.
What's very interesting about all of this is that at the same time, we have a coaching, hiring Iron Bowl because Nick Saban decides this title is enough. He wins the title. He retires this year. So now we got both the Auburn teams vacated as far as coaching goes. All right. So we got interesting stuff here. So they're battling over trying to convince that boy Sweeney. I choose to refer to him by his Christian name, that boy, not Dabo.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. So they're battling over Dabo Sweeney. All right. They're battling. All right. Sweeney, he's smart. Okay. He decides, you know what? It's nice to inherit something someone else has built, but it's nicer to not have to follow a legend and have that burden fall on his shoulders if something goes wrong. So Dabo spurns Bama to go to Auburn. All right. And then most importantly of all, Dabo makes it a point to hire Hugh Freeze as his offensive coordinator in order to take down the Crimson Tide dynasty for good. and Alabama slips back to where they were in the 90s when they were not top of the pack in the SEC, and other teams take over.
The Crimson Tide, now led by Tommy Tuberville.
He's coming back.
I'm just saying, Matt Luke is available.
Matt Luke's available. No,
nobody wants Matt Luke.
We already know Lane Kiffin's going to.
You're right about that.
Lane Kiffin's going to come in as soon as Saban actually retires.
Lane Kiffin off the top turnbuckle into Tuscaloosa.
You know what's going to happen. Lane Kiffin RKO out of nowhere.
His own team.
Has Tua pop in his junior year and throw for 6,000 yards. Just cuz.
Why not?
I'm here for it.
I have no objection to any of that.
Actually, that would be miserable. I would hate that.
I'm not saying that they win because of it. I'm saying it becomes it ends up being like watching Texas Tech under Mike Leach.
He throws for 6,000 yards and they go 2-10.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Lane Kiffin decides to take the opening at USC again.
Is somebody brewing tea in the background? Sounds like a kettle.
That would be the shark vacuum cleaner thing in the living room at our house.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. Last weekend was weird. What was the weirdest thing you saw this past weekend in sports, Keith? Because there was a lot. What was the weirdest if you had to choose?
Probably when Jordan Scarlett decided to celebrate his fourth quarter touchdown by riding an offensive lineman around the field like a horse.
Okay. That was it, huh?
I mean, there was a lot of weird stuff, but that was just so bizarre to me and so hilarious.
All right, fair enough. I feel like I've seen weirder celebrations myself, but
I think LSU and Texas A&M scoring more points in a football game than their basketball teams scored against each other. Especially two teams that this season have been so noted for their offense.
Yes, absolutely. No, that one was weird. As noted earlier, Kentucky dropping 56 points on anyone is pretty weird. Pretty weird. But I mean, then we have let's go ahead and jump into the Egg Bowl brawling that was going on there. All right. So you've got this rivalry that for a while now, people have been like, oh, it's, Mullen spurring things on against, that school up north and all that. Now that he's gone, we'll see what happens. Well, obviously there's still some bad blood between the players. And for the most part, none of that really seemed to be spilling out at all up until this end of the third quarter moment where the clock hits 0, but the referees don't notice it. So a play happens. They throw the ball to A.J. Brown. The defense seems to just be standing around expecting the referees to call the play dead, and it's not. So A.J. Brown catches the ball, fights his way into the end zone against a safety. And everyone instantly decides that's the moment where they're so mad at it all that they have to start punching each other in the face, which is one thing that we'll discuss. And probably the weirdest thing I've seen is the stuff right after the game where like coaches and athletic directors were all yelling at each other. That might be the strangest thing that I've ever seen. But so that happens in this really, really bizarre end of the third quarter type of thing. Then on top of that, the referees stop everything to review to decide whether or not or to decide who gets kicked out of the game for throwing punches. They end up throwing out about 2 players that were not supposed to be thrown out. So they get like half of it wrong. And then that's when they decide, oh, by the way, we also just noticed that we messed up and the play shouldn't have happened. So the whole play gets reversed. There's no touchdown. So you've got this awful thing. I mean, this has been a bad year for officiating, right? I'm not alone in that. There's been a lot of bad stuff, right, Chandler?
Bad year.
This is, I don't know. I don't even know what to make of this moment here. I don't even know what to ask as like the moderator of this podcast. I don't know what to do with this because this play shouldn't have happened and it did, and everyone got mad and punched each other. And then the refs even messed that part. It just was so weird.
Yeah, the fight on the field during the game. I mean, like, honestly, it's a bad look. But who really cares about that? That's kind of one of those things that, like, they're guys, they're young guys. They handle problems how young guys handle them. They fight. Then
I've said it before. Like, I don't ever really necessarily judge people for losing their cool in a competitive situation so much, knowing how many times I have gotten overly upset in a competitive situation. Myself.
I'd like to point out for our listeners that I once threw Joseph out of a gym at a church league basketball game.
Well, you threw everyone out of the gym.
I did throw everyone out of the gym, but Joseph was involved in that.
I did.
Like the refs on Thursday.
Yeah, exactly.
Joseph was justified in his complaint, though. So
yeah, I did have a man mouth off to me as I was trying to quietly leave, and I told him that he could go have fun by himself. In much stronger language than that, and then instantly regretted everything. Anyway, Chandler, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah.
So look, fights on the field, that happens. After the game, guys they're cool, they're shaking hands, they're like whatever. It's like you get mad at each other, you get in a fight. 5 minutes later, it's fine. I don't really care about that.
And so many of those guys have grown up with each other.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. You got these kids that they've grown up, they've known each other for a long time. You get in these emotional outbursts, frustration. I mean, obviously, Ole Miss is getting beat 28-3 at that point. So, of course the guys are going to be frustrated. It's been a long year. It's been a frustrating year. So whatever. That's, like I said, that's not a big deal. It's the stuff after the game that I think really kind of highlights what this rivalry has become. And I think, I don't know if you guys have seen it or not, but the SEC today has issued a statement about the game. And
I was actually going to read it at one point. Would you like me to go ahead and read it right now?
I mean, no, because it's mostly bullcrap. Because
I will save it to read it later.
Because the problem is that if you take a step back beyond what's going on between just the schools, you take a step back, the heat in the rivalry has just kicked up so much, and the SEC office has just sat back and hasn't done anything. We knew it was this hot last year. We knew it was this hot 2 years ago, and there have been no comments, and there have been no comments made at all about it. And I think that I don't want to. I mentioned this in the group chat earlier too, and I don't want to I'm not trying to spin crazy conspiracy theories here or anything, but I think the whole SEC office standing by while a player on a rival team was given immunity to talk about another team, that's not something I think would have ever happened under Mike Slive. Now you may have seen coaching changes and different people moving on earlier than they did, but I don't think that Slive would have let that stuff kind of happen to the point that it did. And I think that's where a lot of the animosity comes from.
Do you think that in a good way or bad way? Do you think Slive would have handled it better, or do you think he just would have put his foot down?
I think Slive would have put his foot down and handled it better. Because as soon as because a big part of the problem with
I asked that because there's few people in the world I respect less than Mike Slive. So
yeah, same. But the problem is one of those people is Greg Sankey.
Right.
So like for example, the all the stuff with Ole Miss and Barney Farrar, the assistant coach who got in all the trouble, it wouldn't have happened because the second that Barney's name kind of came out, Slive would have said, look, he would have called up Ross Bjork or the chancellor or whoever and said, look, I'll make this thing go away if you'll fire him right now. And he would have been fired and everything would have moved on. I mean, it's the same thing that happened with a few years ago with I believe Slive was still the commissioner when the stuff happened with Will Redmond and Angelo Miranda. It's like, look, you get rid of this guy, we'll brush all this thing under, and it's not a big deal. But I think that Sankey is relatively powerless in the NCAA hierarchy, and so he just kind of sat back and took it. And so I think what happens is you have all of this stuff just building and building and building, and it builds on message boards and Twitter, and you've got a fan site writer for one team, writing all this stuff, and fan site writers from another team taking shots at him. It's just back and forth, and it just goes and goes and goes. And the SEC office is finally like, oh, okay, we'll do something about it now. It's like, really, you guys should have stepped in 5 years ago.
trying to see exactly. I also forgot that Mike Slive passed away this year.
He did.
I did forget that. So there is very few people in the world that I respected less than Mike Slive. There we go. I have to make it past tense now. He was the commissioner until 2015. Yeah. So I believe that is still when the Redmond stuff happened. I believe that was like 2014 or something like that. Yeah, here's the quote from Greg Sankey in the SEC statement on it. His quote is, "It remains disappointing to have seen the unnecessary actions during and after the Mississippi State at Ole Miss game on Thursday night. These actions aren't acceptable, and my concern relates to the bigger issue of the repeated incidents before, during, and after games between these football programs. These incidents have become too common in this series. I will require both athletics directors to meet with me at the SEC office in the offseason to review past issues and develop a plan for the purpose of creating a healthier environment for this annual game." The statement also pointed out that there were 4 players, according to review, that should have been disqualified for flagrant personal foul penalties instead of 2 of the players that were ejected, Cameron Dantzler and CJ Moore of Ole Miss. Cameron Dantzler, Mississippi State, CJ Moore of Ole Miss. There were 4 players. Now, granted, those 4 players happen to also be the only 4 players that are in the camera footage. So I don't know. Like, I just assumed maybe Cam Dantzler was off to the sidelines punching someone and you couldn't see him, that sort of thing. But it's just interesting to me that they missed the guys that were obviously in the camera punching each other, like Jonathan Abram and A.J. Brown. And, nothing there. But anyway, yeah, so that's the official statement. Keith, what are your thoughts being like the third-party observer? Because you were watching it live, if I remember correctly. We were messaging back and forth, and you were kind of like, what's happening?
Yeah, it was
and at least with the third quarter thing.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, to put it mildly. But the interesting thing about it is, and it's something that you touched on earlier, Joseph, was the fact that an officiating error started all this, and the incident was wrapped up by more officiating errors. They had time,
and it wasn't even close.
No,
like the clock was on zeros for like a couple of seconds.
Yep, and then they ran it, and then all the fighting happened, and then they actually reviewed the fight to see who to throw out, and still got it wrong.
Right.
That's
pure incompetence.
Yeah, that's what stood out the most to me. Even amongst all the other, craziness, was that they actually took time to review the fight to make sure that they got right who was being ejected, and still missed A.J. Brown, who was again front and center, and Matt Corral, who was front and center. And then the end,
then also to, I'm pretty sure they were trying to throw out number 38, Jonathan Abram of Mississippi State, who was the one who fought A.J. Brown in the end zone for the touchdown.
Yeah.
But instead, I think they accidentally threw out C.J. Moore of Ole Miss, who wasn't even involved with anything. So he wasn't
even playing in the game.
Right. He was suited up on the sidelines, just kind of hanging out.
Yeah. When you have replay technology and you use it, and then you still manage to get 3 out of the 4 players that were ejected wrong.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the game, I think they had already kind of cut away from the game by the time everything happened. But
because I didn't even hear about it till the next day.
Yeah, the whole flag thing, and then I think the Ole Miss assistant AD came out on the field and was mouthing off the people, and then Joe Moore got involved. It was a mess, and a lot of fans like to see brawls and 2 heated rivals kind of going at each other, but a lot of what happened Thursday night was just embarrassing, just for the league as a whole. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, or at least according to what the league is saying now.
Right.
And that's the thing that gets me. Okay.
Their officials had no control of the game.
Nope.
No, none. The officials, not only do they not have any control, they didn't have like the wherewithal to figure out what they had messed up until like they're sitting there reviewing a fight. Like a fight had to break out for them to even realize that like they had messed up, that the play shouldn't have happened. And then as they're trying to fix that, they mess up who's supposed to be ejected from the game for fighting. And like I don't think it would have made a difference either way who it was that was ejected from the game, just considering how the game had gone up to that point. So it doesn't matter then, but it directly shows. And from what I understand, none of the players Mississippi State players would be suspended for the bowl game because like these particular penalties don't bring on like a suspension for the next game. Only targeting does that. Only accidental tackles in the head cause you to be suspended for the next game, not punching someone in the face.
Which is another just weird rule.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So let's go ahead and throw that there as well. But like they messed up everything about it.
Even
went back to review, still messed up part of it.
Even assessing unsportsmanlike conduct penalties to every player of both teams, even the guys that like never left the bench. Everyone got penalties.
Yeah, the best thing was all the special teams guys after the game tweeting like, "Yeah, I finally got my first unsportsmanlike."
Yeah. I love it. But then this is what gets me, and this is, I mean, you hit it on the head, Chandler, and talking about, I mean, the fact that they've let things escalate for years without saying anything about it, and now want to act like high and mighty about it, like, oh, well, this is despicable. I hate it for multiple reasons. Okay, here, first and foremost, and I'm just going to straight up editorialize for a minute here. I hate it because, like, obviously, for third-party observers, the contentiousness of the rivalry brings in a lot of ratings. All right. If you're sitting around with your family on a Thursday night and you live in Des Moines, Iowa, but you like college football, and you want to watch something, well, guess what? There's one game on Thursday night, and it happens to be on Thursday night because they wanted to bring more attention to it. You know, the TV deal was there. They knew it would bring in good ratings because it's a heated rivalry. All right. So, yeah, you're going to really enjoy the fact that it's a heated rivalry because it's going to make you money off of the ratings for a while there. All right. It's going to do that. Yeah. Players score a touchdown and act like a dog urinating on something. People think it's hilarious. All right. No one's getting punched in the face, so you don't have to address it. So there you go. Congratulations. You get your ratings, all of that. But it's them acting as if this is a deplorable action that they, are so upset about, and then trying to act as if they haven't sat by and let this sort of situation, this entire atmosphere develop. And then also to sit around, I mean, and let's not kid ourselves. Let's not act like people aren't entertained by fights.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people tune into NASCAR to see wrecks. All right. People are going to love to tune into a fight. People are YouTubing, getting on YouTube and searching the next day. Oh man, did you see that game? No. Well, did you hear about the fight? Oh man, I got to see that. Yeah. This quarterback got his helmet ripped off. What? People are going to watch that. And then I love it because, and this is what's crazy. All right. Here's the craziest thing about all of this is that, I actually was sent a clip from one, drew a blank on his name. Oh, it was from Max Kellerman. All right. So this is what's crazy about the whole situation is that it's got me promoting Max Kellerman here, but truth be told, I never had much against him. He just yells loudly. And he's on a terrible program, but Kellerman was talking about when the Rockets and the Lakers got in that brawl earlier in the NBA season, about Chris Paul spitting in Rajon Rondo's face, whatever it may be. And Kellerman just flat out went, look, I'm just going to be honest here. I was entertained by it. And it's not, no one wants to admit it, but we're still talking about it on Monday when it happened on Friday. Like we're still talking about it. It's an entertaining thing, and we can sit around all we want and say, "Oh, there's no room for this in sports." Blah 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 blah. But it's getting ratings, it's getting attention, it's getting headlines. It's and people are entertained by it, even if they don't want to act like it. And that's what it bothers me with situations like this is for the officials in charge to let it, what you were saying, Chandler, kind of fester and grow for 5 years and not do anything about it, to then step in now and be like, oh, well, now they've done such a deplorable action that we definitely would have disavowed and we wash our hands of all of it,
And look, whether you view Mullen as the match that started the fire and Freeze as the gasoline that made it explode, or vice versa, again, like you said, the reality is this has been going on for a while, and I think that people have seen this coming for a while, and
let's not forget the rivalry had a brawl like 100 years ago where fans started throwing chairs at each other, and that's why they even made the trophy, made it more official, try to calm people down.
Or the time that I think it was 98 that a Mississippi State recruit attacked Deuce McAllister, and that did not end well for that recruit. I believe that recruit is a UFC fighter now, though. So
wow, all right, good for him.
Wes Shivers, I think was his name. But yeah, look, like we've seen it happening, and I don't know what you do to tone it down at this point, honestly, because it's spilled over into every sport. And I think maybe with the exception of baseball, because baseball players just all grow up together and they're all just one person anyway. But I don't know what you do. I really don't, because I think that if you gave Joe Moorhead and Matt Luke their way, they would want to see it de-emphasized a good bit. See it not de-emphasized, but see it calm down a little bit. I mean,
sure.
I know we've joked about this, but like when I met Joe Moorhead earlier this football season at a high school game, he was like, "Man, yeah." I was like, "Man, I'm an Ole Miss fan. I got my Ole Miss jacket on, but." So I'd love to take a picture with you. He's like, "Man, yeah." I was like, "We get along every day, but every day with the Egg Bowl, we're good." It's like, that's the kind of attitude I think that a lot of people want to have. So whatever we can do to get back to that, I don't know, but
it did. Then it doesn't help that after the game, you have an altercation where Moorhead himself, like, I guess, was he yelling at like Ross Bjork or something about
it wasn't Bjork, it was Michael Thompson, the assistant athletics director, and
he was yelling at someone. He was yelling to someone about
Thompson, and what Thompson did or didn't do, I'm not sure, because there was a video, there was a clip of him on the field, not really him getting in a scuffle, but there was a scuffle kind of going on. He's kind of in the middle of it, trying to get players out of the way. And one Twitter person said that he had called somebody a thug, but if you watch the video, you can't really see him calling anybody. So I don't know exactly what happened.
I didn't hear that word used at all, but again, there was a lot going on. You wonder why your assistant AD is down there anyway. I mean,
that's weird.
And let's also remember here that Michael Thompson was the genius behind the land shark. So he deserves to be fired for that alone. But this just, I mean, I don't know. I don't know why Ross Bjork or Matt Luke or Michael Thompson or anybody involved with Thursday night for Ole Miss's side still have a job, but that's a different conversation for later.
I mean, yeah, it just, I don't know. Keith, what do you think, again, as kind of the third party observer, but a guy that you grew up in Mississippi, you've been around, these the fan bases for a while, even if you have not been one yourself. But at the same time, like, you played, high school football in the state of Mississippi. And so you come from a similar background to most of these guys, because as it was noted, most of these guys on these two teams have known each other, have competed against each other for years and years and years in high school leading up to college. Like, it's a sibling rivalry, not just between like the mentalities of the fan bases and the colleges themselves, but it's almost kind of a sibling rivalry between the players on either team, because they've known the other players like their whole lives and they really want to get one up on them. But like, I mean, when you look at something like that, I mean, do you think that there is hope for a rivalry to get less nasty?
Yeah, I think so. and it starts from the top down. And as players leave the school and come in, if there's an emphasis on, yes, these are our biggest rivals, but they're, you know, they're playing for the same thing that you are. So, and like they're people and they're humans, and like tempers are going to run hot, but you got to remember that you represent the school and the league and the sport as a whole. And as long as coaches emphasize that, and as long as officials maintain the game as they should, then I think that there's a hope going forward. I mean, we had a lot of rivals at Northwest, and but there's mostly talking smack, like between plays or whatever. Nothing ever escalated. So that's just one of those things. What the parents aren't watching the kids, and then suddenly somebody falls off a table.
Yeah. That's a great metaphor. I really like that.
Fitting.
Yeah, it's bad. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, though, like how bad is it? Like it is, because I feel like so much of this stuff still gets glorified. Like, oh, these two teams do not like each other, and maybe it's more acceptable to have that narrative in professional football, where like these people get paid to not like each other. Mm-hmm. But like on a scale of 1 to 10, like how bad is it that these two teams flat out hate each other?
Well, I mean, I think there's just so much. There's so much there's so much off the field stuff. I mean, like because whether it's true or not, and again, there's a whole different discussion about this to be had. But whether it's true or not, it seems like a lot of the Egg Bowl rivalry played out in this NCAA investigation that lasted for 6 or 8 years. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not trying to make a statement whether the truth of that or not, but that's the perception for a lot of people. And again, the SEC office did very little to kind of stop that or quell that at all. And so, so much of it has taken place off the field that, I think just to be able to get it back to, hey, this is just all about a game again. This is all about playing each other on the football field or the basketball court or the baseball field. And this is about going head to head for recruits. And it's about all this kind of stuff. And we kind of cut out some of the billboards and the carrying the trophy around to all the different stops. And both schools are guilty of that. I'm not saying it's one or the other. But I mean, when was the last time that you saw the Auburn, Alabama, coaches going around carrying the Iron Bowl trophy with them? Like, it just, like it just, stuff like that just doesn't happen all that often, I think, with other rivalries. And so there's just so much off the field stuff that's got to be cut out. But I don't think that stuff ever will be, because the people in Mississippi are always going to respond to that. Like they're always going to, this year when they're doing their Bulldog tour, whatever, Bulldog Club on the road, whatever it is they do. And they walk into all those meeting halls with the Egg Bowl trophy, like people are going to go nuts, and people went nuts for it on the Rebel road trip all last year. Like it sells tickets. So, I don't know that a lot of people necessarily want it to change.
Do you?
Oh, I would love for it to change. I may have mentioned this to you. I don't remember who I said this to, but Thursday night was the first time as an Ole Miss fan that I was embarrassed by my school on TV. I was ashamed of what I was seeing, both the quality on the field and the way that especially our guys were acting. Again, not so much during the game, but after it, and the way that just so many different things were going down. I like I said, I mean, I'm being completely honest when I say I don't understand how anybody associated with the football program still has a job after what I saw Thursday night.
I gotcha. Keith, what do you think, though? Do you think this is as bad? Do you agree with Chandler on how the culture itself surrounding it is bad right now?
I mean, we ain't over here killing trees or nothing, but I mean.
Right, there is that.
Well, planting flags and blowing up families.
Did someone explode their family? My goodness.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I do think you're right, though. I was chatting with, after the game, I was chatting with my friend Chad Gibbs, who pointed out, he's like, yeah, he's like, you really don't see the Iron Bowl do that too much, him being an Auburn grad and having been to many Iron Bowls. He's like, you really don't see it like the teams lose, and they're like, well, dang, we lost to our rival. Let's move on. But then you also see Auburn and Georgia do exactly that and really hate each other.
But the thing with Auburn, Alabama is way more often than not, the winner of that game doesn't have to carry the Iron Bowl trophy; they get to carry the SEC West trophy. And I think that's part of it too. Is that the Egg Bowl more often than not is really just the tallest midget competition.
Yeah, I think it's bad. I think the prior 5 or 6 years have kind of created this crucible in which like the perfect circumstances happened to kind of bring this to a fever pitch, with Freeze and Mullen kind of building the pressure, and part of it I think is that Freeze and Mullen wanted to bring attention to this rivalry and to their programs.
I mean, Mullen certainly did.
Yeah. Mullen for sure. Mullen was basically a salesman for.
Yeah, he knew he'd bring the ratings and he'd sell the tickets.
Mullen was smart enough for that. Mullen was smart enough to be calculated. Freeze was just an idiot who played into his hands.
Yeah, and then you go into the SEC or the Ole Miss investigation, and there's some even more hatred because state players said some things, and so you've got 3, 4, 5 years of just tensions building, and then one little thing happens, and it's game on or game over, however you want to say it, and it's not good. Everybody involved has said that this is really, really bad, and steps definitely have to. I think that the SEC made the statement that they had to, and that this has to be guarded against in the future. The problem is that they did not admit that they were complicit in it starting in the first place.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I guess we got to move on to some LSU and Texas A&M talk here because this was the big time huge.
I'm going to retract my weirdest moment of the weekend pick in favor of a head coach getting a Gatorade shower and then losing the game.
Yeah, that's where it all starts with LSU and Texas A&M. Like, yeah, they played an entire game leading up to that, but that's where the narrative really starts. Because that's where as soon as that happens, Texas A&M has a 4th and 18. All right. Well, actually, no. That's when that happens when there's an interception on 3rd and 18, but it is reviewed. Okay. So here's the narrative of heading into overtime and like the beginning of overtime. That play is reviewed. It is called incomplete. Okay, that's when the bath happened. Immediately after that, A&M completes a pass on 4th and 18 in order to keep the game going. People lost their minds about this because there's footage from the broadcast where the player, the wide receiver Courtney Davis, is clearly down ahead of the yellow line. And so it should not have been a first down. But the yellow line was in the wrong place. It was about 2 yards away from where it was supposed to be.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. If they were on the 39-yard line.
People always forget that those lines are never exact anyway.
No. And yeah. Anyway, so it was on the 39-yard line, and 18 yards away from that would have put them the first down marker at the 43-yard line. And the yellow line was placed at the 41, 2 yards farther up than where it was supposed to be. So the guy had it by about a yard. Okay. immediately after that, Kendrick Rogers, a player that a candidate for getting credit this week, mostly because he's had an up and down season and had a lot of injuries and everything this year, and he was the end of game and overtime hero for the A&M. He gets a 19-yard touchdown. LSU goes into overtime, all right, gets a field goal. Then Texas A&M takes over. Kellen Mond completes a pass to Jay Sternberger. Sternberger catches it. I'm watching it in front of me right now. He catches it as one foot is hitting the ground. So it's not really a step. It's more like he's catching it and his foot is hitting the ground at the same time. He takes one step after that. He takes an LSU player's helmet hits like the ball or hits his hand, and he fumbles the ball. Okay? But officials said, no, it's incomplete. He didn't have possession yet. And LSU does not clinch the game like they think they do, like they did on the interception that was reviewed and ruled incomplete earlier. Except this time around, it's not reviewed. Okay? Along with that, the whole catching the first down pass at the end of regulation, that was not reviewed either. So whether or not Courtney Davis actually got the first down was never reviewed in the game. Whether Jay Sternberger had possession and then fumbled the ball was never reviewed in the game. And so then it continues going there. Along with that, let's see, it keeps going. I mean, there's a whole lot more that goes on in terms of like LSU throwing a pass that a wide receiver caught in the end zone, but then they ruled it incomplete as well. There's a whole lot, but there's questionable officiating here. So, Keith, you were watching the game, right?
So here's the thing.
Oh, okay, you were not?
I was watching the game. I watched LSU get the fumble recovery touchdown, and then score a touchdown right afterwards. And I was like, oh, well, this game's over because there was like a minute and a half left or whatever it was. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go watch Tomb Raider. And then I checked something in my CBS Sports app, and I see that it's in overtime. So I was like, well, I guess I'll watch this instead. And that's when I came back, was at the start of overtime.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's fine. But you watched the overtime.
All the drama at the end of the game, though.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the questionable officiating here. Does it make sense to you that you would have an opportunity in a game, and we talked about this a little bit in our tinfoil hat conspiracy theory episode, but you'd have an opportunity in a game where you would have a couple of very important game-deciding plays, such as a massive fourth down conversion and a possible fumble to seal the game, that neither of them would get reviewed at all. Does it make much sense to you that that would not be reviewed?
No. Like,
yeah, it doesn't. That doesn't make sense.
Review plays. Like, take your time and make sure it's right.
Like, if you're going to review
one, why not all of them?
Yeah, if you're going to review, like a targeting call in the middle of the first quarter, to really decide whether this guy was trying to murder another player or whatever it is they try to decide. Like, why would you not take the time on 4th and 18 with the game on the line to stop everything and say, okay, we need to make sure we got this right because this could decide the game. You know what I mean? Like, that should be the common practice, right? I mean, don't they still say the stupid phrase of every play is reviewed? Sorry, I lost track of time looking at it. Or I lost track of my train of thought looking at another questionable call.
But I mean, where do you draw the line there? Because it does end up kind of affecting the flow of the game, and you don't have that takes a substantial amount of strategy out of the way. Like, if you have to stop, every second, it's like, okay, we got to start reviews. We got to start review this play. We got to start, there's got to be, I don't know. There's got to be a happy medium somewhere.
There's got to be. And that's why I'm specifically pointing out that many of these no reviews happened late in the game, but very much like game-defining situations.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, yeah, you could make a great case. What we had talked about a few weeks back, Mississippi State, Alabama, not reviewing a fumble on the opening drive, whatever. Yeah, it's the opening drive. Like, yeah, you could have easily gone, oh, hold on, that needs to be reviewed because that's a fumble. And plus, it's also a fumble. Fumbles are, pretty big plays. But like, yeah, you could say, oh, well, it also was the very beginning of the game. There's really no telling whether it would affect the outcome. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter that much because Alabama would have won that game even if it was a fumble. But the game is, on the line late in the game, and you don't take the time to try to review whether or not Jay Sternberger had possession and then fumbled the ball and LSU recovered it to seal the game. That seems like that should be reviewed. That's in overtime. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like turnovers should be reviewed, fourth down conversions, if it's close. Well, any conversion really. If it's that close, take 2 minutes and look at it. Like, they already do it most of the time anyway. What's separating this from that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. What? Maybe we need to. Maybe that's it. Like, maybe the middle ground, Chandler, is just to have a little bit clearer definition on when, like, things have to be reviewed.
Yeah, I think that would be. I mean, like, I think if you've got, I mean, obviously, all turnovers are reviewed, all scoring plays are reviewed. But I guess, so they say. I guess the complicated thing is just that, like again, how do you? I don't know. How do you work that out? With I don't know, like how do you work that out with late game situations where time is of the essence, and you're like it's A&M strategy at that point. You've just converted that 4th and 18. Okay, we got to get back to the ball like as quick as we can. We got to get on the line right there. And if you've got the ref stopping and saying, all right, we got to stop and review, like all of a sudden that starts to play into the advantage of the other team because they can scheme or get players in, or I mean, there's just a bunch of different things that you can do that really impact the strategy and the flow of the game in ways that I don't think are good.
And then there's the post game. Another post game fist fight breaks out, which is super weird because it's not like this is necessarily a heated in-state rivalry.
Yeah, this one's way more clear cut. This guy's wrong, and let's all high five this other guy for just beating the crap out of a douchebag.
Yep.
Okay, but here's the thing.
But the guy is Jimbo Fisher's nephew.
Yeah. Here's the thing also is what we see is some dude on the A&M sidelines apparently hit Coach Steve Cragthorpe. Is it Steve?
Yep.
Hit him in the chest, according to former LSU player and staff member Kevin Falk. Hit Coach Cragthorpe in the chest. I stepped in. It just happened. Okay, so that's what we see is that part of it. What seems to be coming out after all of this is maybe the person involved happened to be Cole Fisher, Jimbo's nephew.
Good.
So there's that. But also there's a new video that has come out just today, like another angle on things that seems to show an LSU defensive back in all of this actually throwing a punch at Cole Fisher to start things off. So just, I don't know, it's just bad. It looks like it's LSU safety John Battle punching Cole Fisher. I'm pulling up the video right now.
What a perfect name for the situation.
I know, right? Cole Fisher.
Fishing for punches. Am I right?
Yeah. So, this might actually be. Oh, I see it now. Okay. So this was not what actually started it. This looks like while Fisher and Kevin Falk were exchanging blows, John Battle walked up and just punched Cole Fisher in the side of the head. Again, this is entertaining stuff. It shouldn't be, but I'm not going to act like I'm too high and mighty to not find that funny that some dude just walked up and punched him.
When a guy punches a guy with Parkinson's who also has a pacemaker in the chest.
Yeah. So we don't know what started it. Yeah. We have no idea, but we see apparently that, Kevin Falk saw him punch Greg. The question is that who's got to answer for this? Like, does A&M have to make a statement? Does the SEC have to make a statement about this as well, since they made something about the Egg Bowl? I mean, what are they? Who's got to have something to say about it?
They should. I mean, because that's more egregious than anything that happened Thursday night.
Because it's a coach and like a staff or two staff members on different teams throwing punches. It's not, players getting in each other's faces after a game and a coach having to yell about getting this assistant athletic director out of the way. It's not all that. It's a straight up like fist fight.
Yeah.
Between two guys that aren't even players. It's just weird. Like, this has to be one of the weirdest things ever, right?
Yeah. 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 Very, very, very bizarre.
I'm trying to see if there's anything else on what might have started that, but no, it just kind of looks like. So yeah, what it looks like is that it seems as though DeMoine Craig, I guess that's how you pronounce his first name, DeMoine Craig, a former LSU assistant and current Texas A&M.
Damian Craig.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A&M wide receiver coach apparently had words with Cragthorpe, or Cragthorpe had words with him. He was trash talking, yelling, screaming a bunch of crap. That's a direct quote from Cragthorpe. And then Cragthorpe apparently turned and said something to him about it. And that seems to be when Cole Fisher decided it was his responsibility as a strong young man to strike an old man in the chest.
Yeah.
Why not? It's just bad. That's bad. But then what's really interesting about it is that it's really bad. It looks worse. Like, yeah, sure, Ole Miss MSU fight looks bad on the players involved. This looks really bad on the coaching staffs because they were the ones who did it. And for all accounts, it doesn't seem like the players were really saying anything to each other. It was all coaches yelling at each other. Incredible.
I mean, does Cole Fisher, does he have a role like with the program, or is he just there?
Yeah, he has. They said he was just.
He's a manager.
Okay. Wow. So there you go. So he's like not even like staff.
Yep.
Unbelievable. All right. Incredible stuff. But we are getting to the end of this little recording session, and we have a couple of more things to run through. In particular, we've got 2 matchups this week. Huge matchups to discuss. Huge stuff. The obvious first one, and the most important matchup of them all, is Akron and South Carolina playing each other in a makeup game. Here's a fun fact. The last time South Carolina played a regular season game after the Clemson game in their schedule, December 5th, 1987, against Miami, and they lost. So it has been 31 years since they played a game after their Clemson game. Akron is a bad team doing badly. South Carolina got beat up by Clemson, fought hard, but ended up getting beat up by Clemson, maybe demoralized. Does South Carolina redeem everything by beating Akron here? What do you guys think? Yes or no?
I mean, redeeming, no, but they beat them.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna beat Akron. I mean, whatever. They shouldn't even play this game. Like, what's the point?
Nah, they should. I mean, it's just to
gotta have that gate money, man.
Right. It was supposed to happen and it didn't, and they need to have it. It's basically what it comes down to. Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be there, and it wouldn't surprise me if South Carolina is just super flat and doesn't really care much. And not saying that Akron is good enough to beat them, but maybe put up a fight. But then there's the SEC championship game, Alabama versus Georgia, in a rematch of the championship game, the national championship game of last year. Chandler, what about this game do you think is any different from the national championship game?
Alabama's better and Georgia's worse. I mean, like, I mean, look, I would love for Georgia to win this game. It would make everything really, really interesting. Actually, it wouldn't. Everything would be the same, but it would be fun and unexpected. And this is a season that, at least at the top of college football, a surprise or something we don't expect is something I think a lot of people have been really hungry for and really wanted.
Yeah.
And it would make maybe that first round. It would make maybe that first round matchup in the playoff be a little bit more interesting. But I mean, I just don't think that Georgia's there this year with Alabama on that level. So I don't think that there's going to be all that much different from what happened last year.
Well, the follow-up question I was going to ask you, Keith, then is kind of piggybacking off of that. I mean, do you think that Georgia has a chance to pull this off?
I mean, I think they've got a chance. Pretty slim and currently walking away from them, but there is a chance. I just don't think that they're going to capitalize on whatever mistakes Bama does make enough to actually keep it even close, really,
All right, so you think it gets to be a pretty big spread there?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Because I think that Georgia's going to have to rely on Jake Fromm to beat Bama, and that's not going to happen. And I think that Saban's probably going to cut Tua loose a little bit. And
you're saying 16 for 20 is not going to be enough?
16 for 20 for 206 yards is not going to be enough to beat Bama.
What a shame. All right, well, let's
I'll say this. If there's anything that Georgia can do, it's going to be to shorten the game and to keep Alabama's offense off the field, because I don't think that Alabama's defense is as unstoppable this year as it's been in years past. And so if Georgia can somehow manage to control the clock, run the ball, keep Fromm, I know we joke about it, but keep Fromm in that 20 to 25 pass range, then there's a chance that it gets interesting. But I just don't think that's going to happen.
Keep Jake Fromm throwing more than 20 passes a game.
There it is.
I felt good about it, but now I don't.
Something that's interesting to me, and I would be very curious to see how this works out, is so DeAndre Swift and Elijah Holyfield of Georgia, in that, what has been a very much a run-first offense, both rank in the top 10 as far as yardage goes in the SEC. So you got two guys on the same team that are in the top 10 as far as yardage goes, but both of them are in the top 5 in terms of rushing yards per attempt. Both of them average over 6.5 rushing yards every time they touch the ball, statistically speaking. So I'd be very curious to see what would happen if either of them are given the opportunity to, are given the chance to break through the Alabama defensive line and make a move, and what might happen. I know we talk a lot about Jake Fromm having to beat him, but I really do wonder if those running backs would be able to get past that line, because once they do, they make people miss. So that's what I'm really interested in watching. Let's make these here predictions, boys. Akron and South Carolina. Keep the spread on that.
South Carolina is a 28.5 point favorite.
Oh, good grief.
So, yeah.
So we all going South Carolina across the board?
Yeah.
Seems like a good choice.
Yeah, it does. It does. Again, I don't think they'll cover that, because I think they'll cover that because they don't want to be playing any more game unless it's a bowl. So anyway, and then the championship game of Georgia and Alabama. What we got in that spread?
Alabama's a 13-point favorite.
Ooh, look at that. Chandler, you think the Tide pull it out?
What'd you say the spread was?
13.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
All right. So you're saying Bama, and you seem to be saying by 13. Keith?
Bama
as well. Pretty solid, boys. I'm gonna go Georgia on this one. I'm gonna say that Bama has played the perfect season. The last several years, they, of course, have had one loss, just kind of in general. And while I don't really feel confident that it would happen, I'm going to pick them because, hey, this might be their one loss on the season.
There it is.
Without fail, what will happen is that they will drop to number 4 in the playoff, and then we'll have both Georgia and Alabama in the playoff again.
Boo.
Because that seems to be what the people in charge who write these scripts like to see. So,
And Ohio State. And
Boo.
yep, it's going to be Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and then Notre Dame. Those are going to be the 4.
What do you do with an undefeated Clemson then?
They're not undefeated. They lose.
To who?
I don't know. I'm just saying they're out.
who they
You gotta
playing?
Gotta have Notre Dame and Ohio State. It's a 5-team playoff. They
Like,
put Clemson in there, but
Play-in game.
like,
Alabama plays Clemson for the last spot.
that's it. That's exactly what it is. That's what
All
you're
right. Whatever. Let's.
Yep. So we have we always do one random prediction. Here's the random prediction of the week this time around. It's going to be the Conference USA title game, and here's the reason behind that decision. All right. It's UAB at Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Okay. UAB and MTSU
Bo.
literally just played this past weekend in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. All right.
Mhm.
UAB had locked up the CUSA West and an appearance in the CUSA title game. Middle Tennessee had not. But all that Middle Tennessee really needed to win the CUSA East was for Florida International to lose to Marshall, which they did. And Marshall then was tied for second place with Florida International. Okay. You guys follow me on that so far? Everything good there?
Mhm.
We should have been a Conference USA podcast, just so you guys know. This is so much more entertaining than any storyline in the SEC right now. So if Florida International had beaten Marshall, they would have won the division as long as MTSU lost. But instead, Marshall beat them. They ended up with the same record. Whatever. So they tied for second place, which means that MTSU went ahead and secured that division championship without even having to play against UAB last weekend. The game starts, then they catch wind in the first quarter. Oh, Florida International's already lost. We already won it. So MTSU didn't even need to win, but victory would have earned them home field advantage against UAB, who they were currently playing at home. And naturally, MTSU won big. So the two teams who just played each other now have to go back to the same place and play each other again 1 week later. And that is the best college football storyline I've heard all week. I don't care what anyone else has to say about it. There you go. UAB at MTSU. Keith, the spread, please.
MTSU is a 2.5-point favorite.
All right. Chandler, who you got? The Blazers or the Raiders?
I want to be a big believer in the Blazers, but I think having seen what happened last week and it being in Murfreesboro again, I'm going to go the Blue Raiders.
All right. Keith, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go MTSU. Part of me thinks that UAB having it locked up just sort of put it in cruise control and just didn't care about what happened. But I also think they're getting jacked like that, then having to go back the very next week and do the same thing kind of messes with you. So I'm going to go MTSU.
And I'm going to be different here too and go UAB. We've predicted actually a game for both MTSU and UAB so far this season, and I picked MTSU in the one game that we had them in. I picked UAB in the other game we had them in, and both teams lost. So it just kind of seems whoever I pick is going to lose. Doesn't matter. I'm going to go with the Blazers in this one. That's my pick. All right, there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, that is running out the clock at the end of the regular season. Man, we're going to be coming up on bowl season soon. Have a lot of bowl episodes to do. We'll have some recaps. We'll have a lot of team assessments. Run through the SEC teams and debate whether they had a good year, a bad year, mediocre, whatever it may be. We'll come up with that rating system later on.
You'll never believe what I think about Ole Miss's year. It's gonna shock you.
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
Clickbait Chandler.
All right, this has been Running Out the Clock. Stay tuned to us this week. We may or may not put out podcasts that we say we do on a weekly basis, but then actually don't. Who knows? We'll find out later on, I suppose.
Young Sheldon is up next.
That was it.